right, everybody. We're about to go live in just a second. Ready for another Accountability Success Circle Success Quickie. This is number 49. 3 ways that you can categorize your boundaries. Boundaries. All right, we're going to go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey!
Hi, guys! Happy Thursday!
Happy Thursday. Ah, yes. How are you doing, April?
I'm just shocked that we've done this 49 times. This is awesome.
Right? And it doesn't get old.
It doesn't get old.
Every time feels like the first time, right?
I don't know. It's getting a lot easier nowadays. Oh, gosh.
Oh, yes, it is.
It's like we just know what we need to do. We just get in, we get out, and we're done. And
right?
We've got a flow going.
We definitely got a flow.
We have mastered Quickie.
Right? We have mastered it. All right. So I hope you're excited because we are excited to talk about some of the things that we, what we do. My name is Gary Ware, and I'm joined by the ever so effervescent
April Schluter.
Yes.
We are the co-founders of the Accountability
Success Circle.
And we are just having a fun on this Thursday afternoon, sharing some tips. Just the tips. And just help you thrive in your life and just have fun, but in a quick fashion, because ain't nobody got time for lots of talking.
Right.
But when you do want to dive into that longer, deeper content, we all have that too. But these are for the people who are like, I just want to get in, get out, and move on.
Right? And move on. Awesome. Yeah. Yes. And so we're talking about boundaries. And what I love about what we're going to be covering, it is all about flexibility. Because here at the Accountability Success Circle, we're all about doing it your way right away. And so we're going to just give you a fresh perspective on boundaries and talk about different categories so that when you're thinking about boundaries, you can realize, do they fall in one of these 3 categories? And maybe that is the challenge. Maybe that's the challenge you're having, is you're looking at it one way and maybe another person's looking at it a different way, and that is where you can dive in. So April, anything else to set them up before we just jump into it?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to share, this is a quickie that we're sharing because it's very relevant to some of the work that I'm doing myself right now, in the work and the people who are supporting me. And just, it's always great to get support, one, because you learn things that, even though I teach boundaries constantly, I feel like, because I have to learn it on my own, there's all of these different tools out there. And this one in particular was really, really interesting to me because I never looked at boundaries this way. You think about boundaries and it's like, here's what I am willing to do and not do. And that kind of is that, but you might need to take it to the next level. And so as we talk through some of these different categories, I want you to think about maybe just as a premise, you might want to take some time, if you want to pause the video or come back to it or listen to what we have to say and then do this. But what I would recommend is creating a list of like the boundaries that you need for yourself to thrive. And so this could be in interaction with any of your family members, your significant other, boundaries at work, things that you would like to set up that would make you successful. And then you can take that list and kind of categorize it into these 3 ways that we're going to share. So,
yes.
Shall we get started?
Yeah, let's get started. This is, and just know we're going to go from hard to soft. Hard to soft. And I just mean that just to give you a visual of the most firm, it's solid, to the most like sort of like loosey-goosey. And if you're interpreting something other than boundaries, that's on you. So, number one, this is the hardest of all of them. These are laws.
Laws.
April, kick it
So,
off. What's a law?
so, so the law type of boundaries are kind of the ones that are like, you don't cross this. This is hardcore, as Gary was saying. This is like a brick wall that you're putting up, and you shall not pass. So this is the most strict of the boundaries, where it's basically like, you do this and like we're not friends anymore, or something like that. These are non-negotiable. This could be something like, as an example, like one of the laws that I set in my house is that you absolutely, my children do not play any electronics while they're remote learning or while they're in school, right? That's absolutely not. I mean, sometimes they want to break the rule, but they have to suffer some massive consequences if that's going to happen. So this is like non-negotiable. This is, I'm putting my foot down, and all that. Some other examples. Gary, do you have some?
Oh yeah,
examples?
Chris Rock talks about this one. No sex in the champagne room. No sex in the champagne room at all. Like, that is like non-negotiable. Like, that will get you kicked out of Vegas, and friendships can end if you try to initiate that. Nice. But the main thing is, like when we were talking about these, like all kidding aside, these are the things that make up your values, and it keeps things moving. Like, for example, we don't drive here in the States. We drive on the right side of the road. If you drive on the left side of the road, so on the wrong side of the road, you may die. So that's what we mean by laws. These are like the highest of all standard, non-negotiable. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200 sort of situation.
Yes. So that's one. That's one type of boundary.
Yes.
We go to the number two. Number two is rules. And so the way that you want to look at rules is, it's kind of like a law, but a little bit more flexible, where we say like, like a window as an example. So, a window, for the most part, at least here in Chicago, stays closed, but every so often we might open it to let the fresh air in. But for the most part, especially when it's either too hot or too cold. And so we're going to keep the weather outside for the most part, or, in the spring for those 2 days where it's normal, we might open the window. So it has a little bit of flexibility. It can be adjusted depending on a situation. So as an example, like, the rules are like laws that have a little bit of a bend to them. So yes. One of the examples that I thought about is that, like, in my household and in most Filipino households, that like it's part of our tradition where you take your shoes off when you enter a house. And, not everybody has that, but, it being in a somewhat Americanized house, Filipino American house, we have guests that come from time to time and they don't even think about taking off their shoes. And I'm not going to be like, no, take off your shoes. I usually just say it's not a big deal, because it's not their culture. And so it's fine. So that is a rule that, even though when I come home, the shoes are going into like little cubbies and being put in the right places, but we kind of bend the rules for other people. Gary, do you have any examples of rules for you?
Yeah, for me, like as far as my morning ritual, over the last couple of years, especially being a dad, it's adjusted. But one of the things that is pretty consistent is meditation. I do meditation just about every day as soon as I get up. And that can fluctuate depending on what's going on. I may, move it to the end of the day, but for the most part, it's pretty firm. Like, and even my son knows, like, oh, Daddy, are you meditating? And I'm like, yep, I'm meditating. So that is a rule for me, but it's not so set in stone that, that if I don't meditate, like, into the world.
Yeah. And, another guideline, if you want something that's a little bit more broad for people, we all talk about how, like, we want to get 8 hours of sleep, we need 6 or 7 at the very bare minimum, right? But we sometimes bend those rules when we go out, hanging out with friends late night on a Friday night, and then, or binge watching until 2 o'clock in the morning. And so we break those rules. Like, I just did that last night, where I went to bed at 4:30 and then I woke up at 7:30, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to pay for this. But I bent those rules. Like, I know that I should ideally go to bed around 10:30, 11, but sometimes I go to bed at 4. So that's an example of a rule. The third, which is the soft, flaccid rule.
The soft, flaccid. The most category. Flexible.
Oh, we are having fun with this today. Are guidelines. So guidelines are just merely a suggestion, right? These are boundaries that we'd ideally like to put in place. Like for me, I have a boundary that I know about where, I'm kind of sensitive, and not that I'm not open-minded, but I kind of am jolted by unexpected things. And so I know for myself that it's ideal if somebody wants to give me feedback about something that I'm doing, like I have to be in the right mindset for it. So like I ideally like people to just ask me for permission to like say, is this, can I share my opinion? And I will always say yes, but it just gives me that like split second to think. And so I know that that is a boundary for me. And if I can communicate that, I will. But A, not everybody follows it. B, sometimes I don't follow it when I'm interacting with other people. And C, like many people just don't know that that's a boundary that I have. So it's a suggestion. I know that it's something that makes me feel better if it is clear, but it's not something that's like set in stone. I don't have it like pasted on my forehead. Like, please ask me for permission to give me feedback. Like that's not something that I'm going to lay my foot down for. But it's something that I would prefer. Gary, do you have any other examples that you might share that might fall as a guideline?
Yeah. One, trying to goal set during a global pandemic. It's one of the things that you might want to like consider some of these things, but because there's so much uncertainty, you have to be uber flexible. Or another big one is that oftentimes, we say the weekends are for rest, and that is something that we strive for. But as we know, things may come up. You might have to work and stuff like that. And so that is the most flexible. Again, guidelines are the most flexible. It's just more like an unspoken thing. It's not set in stone. And so that is all three, and that brings us to the fourth thing. So we went over laws, which are the hardest, the most firm. Then we got in the medium side, rules. Like April said, that's like a window. It's solid, but we can move it. And then we got the most soft of all of them, which are guidelines. And if you went through all three of them and thinking about guidelines or boundaries that you have set, now this is where the action comes in, is to review your boundaries and categorize them. Where do they fit? Are they unmovable, like non-negotiable, like a law, or they're just more of like I hope so, like sort of like a guideline?
Yeah, and I think the reason that you want to do this is because it is really important for you to know how to categorize these boundaries, because when it becomes something that, you set up boundaries to separate yourself from different objects or different people, and you sometimes either need to put things in place to make those to enforce the rules, the laws, or the guidelines. And it might actually, because when I was going through this process, I was like, oh, a lot of my boundaries are guidelines. And so when I'm noticing that I'm getting triggered about some boundaries and values that are getting crossed, I'm realizing that I'm not setting them in the right category. And so you want to think, do we need to adjust? Like, do I need to put something in place to make it more strict or less strict? Because it's, either causing tension or some sort of rub that is like, shouldn't be there. So that's one thing that you want to think about. The second thing that you want to think about is that different people can perceive the boundaries to be, different categories. And so when you are explaining your category or you're explaining your boundary to somebody, you need to be explicit on where it falls in this like in the spectrum of soft to hard. And so making sure that you're on the same page with anybody that you're setting a boundary with is important, because you can, perceive it in your way all you want, but if the other person doesn't receive it the same way, right? The basic communication one-on-one, 101, not one-on-one. Where am I going?
Oh, it is one-on-one.
It is one-on-one, but my brain is wherever today. One, now I'm having a brain fart. If you're not
Communication.
having 101. So
Yep.
if you're not communicating and if you're not on the same page, that can, no matter how you set up your boundaries, they can still be misconstrued. I don't know if there's anything else that I had to say. Gary, do you have anything else that you want to share when we think about why it's important to categorize these and what to do with it once we have categorized?
Well, that's the main thing, is to get on the same page with yourself and with other people. Because again, if you are uncertain and you're not clear, then how can you expect other people to be clear? Yeah. And you may realize going through this process that you might need to have some conversations with people. And guess what? We got your back, because if you need to talk to someone about boundaries, can you believe that, April? This was in episode 36, where we gave some tips on that, and I'm going to put that into the chat. And that title was episode 36, 3 boundaries that you might not realize you need to create. And we give a really great framework on how to have a conversation with people about boundaries, and how to do it in a way that it's positive and it's not just sort of screaming at someone. Because ideally, you shouldn't get to that point. If you're getting to that point, I think you've gone a little bit too far if you're seriously screaming at someone. So, yeah. Anywho, I'm going to put that into the chat. And this is another quickie. April, bring it home.
Absolutely. And, one last thing about boundaries. This is super important. We've talked about it before. We'll probably talk about it again. One of the realizations that I'm having about boundaries is that it really, and in light of the ASC monthly theme that we are wrapping up here, which is expansion, we talked about in our webinar last week about how, even as we're expanding and growing, we still have to set boundaries, because that's going to kind of help be our guardrails in like where we're going, right? You're not like driving down a dirt road and like just swerving everywhere and like breaking up all the dust, right? You are trying to stay on the road and try to keep it as clean as possible. This is a really bad analogy. But what I'm trying to say is that boundaries are super important. And it's not like it has to be, like, oh, stop, you cannot, you shall not pass. Like, not everything is that way. There are boundaries that are just guidelines. So just keep that in mind. And this is just another, one of our tips that we're going to continue to share. We do this every couple weeks or so to give you all the goodness, just a positive little tip to take with you on your way, whether you're just kind of sitting at your desk doing some work and want to listen to our beautiful voices, or, hear our positive words of inspiration and encouragement. But the bigger group that we are the heads of is the Accountability Success Circle, which is a awesome group and community of global members who are committed to their own personal growth and accomplishing goals, and doing it in a community where it's fun and lighthearted and supportive. So if you are looking for that, something that has a lot of personal touch and gives you the just gives you that accountability to move forward always in your life and in your professional endeavors, come check us out at accountabilitysuccesscircle.com. We've got your back, and we'll be back here with another quickie in a couple weeks or so, with our new theme that we will be sharing very shortly. So check us out. Come join us if you're interested. And that's it. See you later.
Bye, everybody. Yeah. My voice didn't get deep this time.
Except for there.